Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's T1D Tuesday, where we talk all things T1D. I'm your host today, Nuclear, and today I am joined by the wonderful Mollie Hillis, who is part of the Breakthrough T1D UK team. She is the Senior Research Communications Officer over there, so we're going to dive into what kind of research is going on over there, and also her own life with T1D as well. So welcome, Mollie. I'm so happy to have you with us here today. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I want to start off with having you kind of introduce yourself, give us kind of your background story, and why you're here with us today.
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. This is the first time I've done a Twitch stream, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. My name's Mollie. I work for Breakthrough T1D in the UK. I have type 1 myself. I got diagnosed in 2006. So it is my 20-year anniversary coming up next year. I know. Cause for celebration, yes.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. It feels like it was yesterday, but also feels like it's been forever at the same time. I have always been really interested in the science behind T1D. I dedicated my undergrad and postgrad at university to research into type 1 and type 2
Oh,
diabetes
wow.
with a main focus on type 1. So my
Cool.
undergrad was called it's a system called bioinformatics, where you use computer programming to hypothesize protein interactions in the body and whether or not some are more likely than others in people with type 1 or type 2 diabetes, and whether certain things could be causative factors for infections and things like that. And then my postgrad was in wound care in diabetic foot ulcers. So
Oh, wow.
which bacteria are more likely to infect foot ulcers with an increase or decrease of oxygen, basically, depending on if they're aerobic or anaerobic bacteria. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. Then I finished uni, packed my bags and went traveling, as most people do when they finish uni. Came back to the UK and started a career in medical communications rather than research communications. So I worked for a couple of companies which are employed by pharmaceutical companies to kind of communicate science and new breakthroughs to healthcare professionals. And then my first avenue into research comms has actually been Breakthrough. I've always wanted to work within the diabetes space ever since I started at university and kind of prioritized diabetes as a research topic for myself. I always wanted to be part of a company that makes a difference, and a company that I've raised money for so many times before. And yeah, I'm just really passionate about communicating what type 1 is, the really exciting research that's going on, and the goal of us all, which is to eventually have a world without type 1.
Yes, and we're so close. I that's
I know.
really that's really really amazing that you went into university knowing that you wanted to do
Mhm.
this. So you were diagnosed, you said, at 6 years old. Is that
No,
right?
2006. I just turned
2006.
12.
Okay. So at what point then after that did you kind of decide that you wanted to do a career with type 1 diabetes?
So it's a good question. So I think I've always been interested in science. My dad is a chemical engineer, and so he was always supportive of my enthusiasm towards biology and chemistry and physics and all of that when I was at school. And then I think I toed and fromed with doing medicine when I was studying, and then I kind of thought, so my university degree was biomedical science. So it's kind of the science behind the medicine without practicing the medicine. And I thought I could do my biomedical science degree. And if I wanted to do medicine after that, there's a really easy avenue into doing that. And then when I was doing the biomedical science degree, I realized that I wanted to kind of communicate rather than be hands-on with patients, I think, a little bit more, because I found the research so interesting. And so many doctors are heavily involved in the research, but at that time I just felt it was like a a moment for me when I realized this was kind of what I wanted to do. The more I studied, the more fascinating I found type 1 and diabetes in general. I think, yeah, just the more you learn when you're in an environment where you have so much knowledge around you, it opens so many other doors in your mind and questions. And it's just something that, yeah, the more I studied, the more it kind of became apparent that that's what I wanted to do.
I love that so much. Also, women in science. We need more women in
Women in
science.
STEM,
So
always,
love
yeah.
that so much. What's kind of your day-to-day life with Breakthrough T1D UK look like?
So every day is kind of, it's very cliche to say this, but every day is different. I think we obviously have a lot of ongoing projects going on in the background to do with early detection is a really big one for us at the moment. Type 1 and disordered eating is another thing which we're focusing on at the moment too. So I have a lot of kind of background work to do with updating web pages and ensuring all of our educational content is up to date. And then also, if there's a new publication, trying to be really proactive with getting a news story out so we can let the general public know as soon as possible. Because I think a lot of people who aren't so heavily involved within kind of a research community aren't aware of how much there is going on all the time. There's so much research and it's fantastic. There's just constantly new publications, new people presenting brand new data, really exciting developments. So I do a quick scan of all of my favorite journals to find any new publications. And then, yeah, just creating news stories, lots of social media content. And a big one at the moment that I've been focusing on has been Diabetes Awareness Month. So our campaign at Breakthrough T1D has been all about research and kind of going back to basics and really educating people on what type 1 is, how people can get it, what an autoimmune condition is, what is a beta cell, really stripping it back, because we kind of realized that a lot of people who don't have type 1 don't really understand the mechanics of it in the background. So we wanted to kind of do that. So the research team have been taking the lead on Diabetes Awareness Month, which has been really exciting. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything, to be honest, but lots of content creation, whether it's social media, website assets, lots of collaboration between the team. I get to speak to loads of people every day within the company. So yeah, it's really good. Different every day, which I love.
Yeah, that's great. We were talking to earlier before we started the stream about how misunderstood type 1 diabetes is, and how for both of us a big priority in what we do for our jobs is just helping the general public understand what really is this condition and what it's like to live with it, because it is so much more, as you said, complex than the average person understands, and trying to communicate that is so important in what we do, and advocating for ourselves and a cure. It's all part of the process.
Exactly.
What would you say are some of the like really exciting things happening in research right now that you could share with us?
Is this UK specific or
yes,
just
UK? Yeah,
UK. UK specific.
UK specific. Yes.
Yeah, of course. So I think the one that comes to mind initially, which is a project that I am really excited about, is a researcher in the UK. He's called Colin Diane. He's based in Exeter. Exeter University have so many ongoing research projects at the moment funded by Breakthrough T1D. And they're currently looking into an automated glucose tolerance test. So at the moment, the gold standard is kind of, you do the glucose tolerance test, which is when you drink a sugary glucose liquid, and they do 5 different blood tests across the space of, I think it's 2 hours. And then they see how your blood sugars react. And then based on that, they can see if you will develop type 1 diabetes. So when somebody isn't diagnosed in DKA, this is kind of the gold standard as to how you will get diagnosed with type 1. So Colin and his team are trying to create an automated version of this. So they're using the type 1 diabetes, I think it's called the T1D Bank, and it's got about 7,000 people in it, and they're using all of their data to create an automated model. So it'll be a computer program and they are looking to basically speed up the process of diagnosis. So we all know about teplizumab and the amazing product that it is, but it took, I think, 10 years to come to market. And the hope with this automated test is that if we can predict earlier on if somebody is going to develop type 1 diabetes, preventative measures can be taken sooner. So if this automated model does kind of pick up, it can be used for, not just type 1 diabetes, it could be used for other autoimmune conditions as well. But I think, the important thing is if we can identify it years before diagnosis, and with ongoing disease modifying therapy research, I think there's 7 at the moment that are being investigated, which haven't been approved for use as disease modifiers, but the research is showing that they could be. It could just play a huge role in preventing the onset of type 1 diabetes. And I guess related to the US as well, the automation of the model can kind of ensure that all the researchers and drug companies are using the same measures, and then the model can be traceable, which means that agencies like the FDA can easily check the results and potentially approve a drug's use for like a drug's licensing more rapidly, which of course is really important because there are so many drugs which are in the pipeline, but the pipeline is so slow.
Yes.
And I think that unless you're within research and you understand, the level of safety data and ethics that have to go behind every trial, 10 years is a really long time, especially when you're waiting for something that can kind of, prevent somebody from developing type 1 diabetes as quickly, or change their life in a way. So it's aiming to, if it works, touch wood, it's aiming to kind of speed up that process, which can basically just enable people to access these disease modifiers potentially quicker, which is just really exciting.
Could you kind of like went over this very briefly, but for our audience, sure, could you talk about the disease modifying therapies?
So disease modifying therapies are therapies which can act on your immune system and kind of slow it down from the attack, and it can prevent an autoimmune disease kind of progressing as quickly as it would without the drug. So basically with Tzield, what it does is it slows down the attack on the beta cells in the pancreas and can extend your time in stage 2 type 1 diabetes. So there's 3 stages, and stage 3 is when you get diagnosed, and stage 2 is where you don't have any symptoms, but your blood sugars have gone a little bit all over the place in the background, but you're not presenting with symptoms yet. It can slow down that progression and modify the disease basically in the course of action of the disease. So with the drug, it gives you potentially 3 years extra without
incredible
type 1, which as two people with type 1 diabetes, any time without it would have been amazing. So it has the potential to change lives for so many people across the globe. And it's approved in the US, it's approved in the UK. We're just waiting on it to be final approved for use on the NHS at the moment, and it's also I think it's approaching the decision phase in the EU as well. So lots of quick progress being made. It's really exciting.
It's really, really exciting because, as you said too, as 2 people who have been diagnosed with T1D, like if I could have had I was diagnosed at 8 years old, and if I could have had extra time without having to deal with that, and also just like, I think too, another aspect of early detection is T1D is so complicated to manage. It's a 24/7 thing that we have to think about. We say on average 180 plus decisions extra we make a day regarding our T1D. And having extra time to learn what is T1D and how do you manage it before actually being diagnosed, I think is an incredible piece too that we don't talk about as much with this.
So when I was diagnosed almost in DKA.
That's what I was about to ask. What your kind of story was getting diagnosed, and if you had the typical like DKA story.
So I just started high school. So I was 11. I just turned 12. And just before my 12th birthday, I was a child, so I didn't really notice this, but obviously the classic 40s, super thirsty, drinking so much. I'd get home from school and I'd just get a glass and I would just drink and drink and drink until my stomach was full of water. Always on the toilet, and I lost a lot of weight really quickly. My mum worked for the NHS. She wasn't a nurse, but she works with a lot of nurses. And she basically said, Mollie's been acting really strange at home, and kind of went through what was going on. And they said, take her to the GP straight away. Did a finger prick test. It just said hi on the machine, and classic. And
Classic, yep.
They said, yep, you have type 1 diabetes, sent me straight to the local hospital where they did a more in-depth blood test. And I think, I'm not sure what the US conversion of this is, because we use mmol in the UK, but my bloods were, I think, 36.9. So they were really high. And the doctor said I was less than a week away from DKA, and obviously the potential awful consequences that can happen from that. I think because I was diagnosed on the day, and I suddenly, overnight, life completely changed. And like you said, there's so many extra decisions and things you have to think about, you know, exercise, food, sleep, hormones, the weather, everything can kind of affect it in a different way. And the burden on the patient for type 1 is so high compared to a lot of other autoimmune conditions, because it's a lot of self-management. You have to really look after it on your own. And I think, just to circle back to the early detection, if I'd had even 6 months where I could have learned a bit more about it rather than being really thrown in at the deep end, it really would have helped me on my diabetes journey, because it's really hard to suddenly wake up and have to inject yourself 4 times a day and prick your fingers and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, even a few months extra would have made a huge difference.
It's such a, as you said, like a huge lifestyle change when you're diagnosed. I did pull up the conversion. You said you were 36.
36, yeah.
Just for context for our US audience, that's 648 for our measurement, which is absolutely, that is so crazy high.
It was crazy. The doctor was like, I don't understand how you're not in a coma, basically. It was so high.
That's because
he came in and he was like, oh no, this is not good. Basically. But yeah.
And if we had early detection, you wouldn't have been in that state.
Exactly. And we know now, if you are diagnosed in DKA, there is a higher risk of complications later in life. So it doesn't just help with the now, it helps with the future as well for people with type 1. So it can potentially reduce the risk of, you know, complications with your eyes, with your heart, with your nervous system. It can really help with like so much more than just the present.
Yeah. And that's something that, for anyone who's not aware, that these long-term problems with our bodies are largely associated to long periods of time with your blood sugar being high because of the damage that does to your body. And that doesn't go away. That's just that can pop up later in life. Those, as you said, problem with your eyes, feet is another big one for diabetics. And that all comes from these prolonged blood sugars. So having that piece where we are getting earlier detection and taking away those long periods of high blood sugars while undiagnosed, huge for long-term health for people living with type 1 diabetes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's very, very incredible things you're doing right now. What does we touched on this earlier, your collaboration with Breakthrough T1D UK and other affiliates. Can you kind of go over how that works?
So the other Breakthrough offices. Yes. So we have I think it's every 6 weeks. I have a meeting with the research comms teams across the US, Canada, Australia, and then in the UK. Unfortunately, being in the UK, it's always about 9-10 o'clock at night for me, where it's really early or like middle of the day for everybody else. But yeah, we have those updates where we kind of discuss what's going on, any congresses or conferences that we're attending, new publications, what's kind of in our content calendars, what we're shouting about. We're also really trying to share a lot of the assets. So for example, if we publish a story on an exciting development, I'll send all of the social media assets to all the other teams to be like, you guys want to use this, go for it. We've since I've joined, so I've been at Breakthrough for about 6 months, so I'm relatively new.
Okay.
And I think that the meetings kind of, as they often do when you work in these kind of jobs, they just drop out of the calendar. But we've recently started them up again. I've met a lot of wonderful people from across the globe, which is always lovely. And it's a really supportive environment. It's really collaborative. And yeah, just I think because we all have the same kind of drive and passion, everyone's really helpful and knowledgeable. And I feel like I can ask questions to anybody there, or they can ask me, and we review each other's work. And yeah, there's a lot of cross collaboration that goes on, which is great.
Yeah, that's part of our initiative here at Breakthrough T1D Play has been trying to work with our affiliates across the globe, because it really is a global effort here, and it's incredible all the different research going on all over the place. We've done events with Breakthrough T1D UK. We've worked with Australia, so I feel you with the time zones.
The time difference, yeah.
It's like when it's working with Australia, it's like, all right, late night meetings I'm doing with them. I'm up late at night. But it is, as you said, so inspiring just seeing all these people around the world so passionate for the same cause. And I've met, as you've said, so many wonderful people throughout this, and it's really inspiring, I think, from the perspective of someone living with T1D.
Absolutely.
To see the drive and passion towards us improving life for people like ourselves.
Definitely. I think especially in I've met the research comms teams in the other countries, but at Breakthrough T1D in the UK, most people have a personal connection to type 1, and that's why they get involved in with the charity. So we have a type 1 diabetes involvement group where there's a bunch of us who, if you want to have a moan about a stubborn blood sugar day, or you want some advice on if you have, a procedure. So like we mentioned earlier, you can have side effects with your eyes. So if you have an eye procedure that you're a little bit nervous about, maybe see if anybody else has had it. And it's a really supportive kind of environment. And it's just lovely to have so many people who are so passionate about one common goal in a workplace. Because everyone's just really, really driving to push towards the cure.
Yeah,
as we all say.
And it is a really exciting time, I think, in general, to be working towards
absolutely
cures for type 1 diabetes, because we are on the brink of, as you said, so many great things. How do you see clinical trials shaping the next 5 to 10 years of T1D care?
So it's a great question. So I recently virtually attended EASD, which is the European Association for the Study of Diabetes. And there were so many presentations about phase 1 and phase 2 research. So that's in the early stages where it's either, where it's basically, it's most of the time, it's not on humans yet. So normally it's on kind of mouse models or animal models before it goes to the human trials, just for safety, to make sure everything kind of works before it gets put into people. There are so many things up and coming. It is overwhelming in the best way. So, for example, there are a couple of presentations that I saw about implantable devices that get put near the large vein in your liver called the hepatic vein, and they basically contain kind of suspended beta cells, which, because they're inside of a device, they don't get attacked by your immune system, and then they can kind of responsively be used to control your blood sugar. That's in the very early stages. Again, who knows if it will be successful? The thing with early stages is everyone has great ideas and it doesn't always come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something like that obviously is so exciting. Things that we're working on in the UK specifically we're doing a lot of research into novel insulins at the moment. So insulins are great, they do the job, but could they be better? Absolutely. Most people with type 1 will be on an insulin where they have to wait 10 to 15 minutes before they eat. Ideally, it doesn't happen every time because it can't.
Yes.
But ideally, have to wait 10 to 15 minutes before they eat because that's how long it takes for the insulin to kind of be available to work within the body. There's a lot of research going on for faster acting insulin. So human insulin that's inside the body reacts so quickly to food so that your blood sugars don't spike too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of research into that. There's also research into longer acting insulins. So there's some into once a week insulin injection, which once it's in can then be responsive whilst it's in your bloodstream. There's also research into hybrid molecules. So there's one which we've been funding that's actually took place at Indiana University with a really lovely professor called Michael Weiss. And he's been researching in animal models a insulin glucagon fusion protein. So basically, insulin is the thing that lowers your blood sugar, and glucagon is the thing that raises it in a non-diabetic person. And basically, the molecule in mice prevented episodes of severe hypoglycemia. So it has the potential to reduce the risk of hypos. Again, I say potential because it's not in human trials yet, but it's another exciting development that the risk of, if in my life, if there was a reduced risk of hypo, I would be thrilled, because sometimes they can just get you out of nowhere. They stop you from driving. They stop you from, meeting friends. Sometimes I'm like an hour late to meet people because I don't feel like it's safe to leave the house yet. So to kind of alleviate some of that pressure and that stress through something like this would be amazing. There's also so much research into new tech. So there's continuous ketone monitors, which are being researched by Abbott at the moment. We're on a hybrid closed loop at the moment, which obviously is the pump and the continuous glucose monitor. But there's been research into a fully closed loop. So updating algorithms with faster acting insulin. So eventually it would be responsive enough that you don't have to do carb counting anymore, which again is a huge part of the stress that people with type 1 kind of struggle with. So I think novel insulins is huge. Tech is so exciting. I'm sure you got diagnosed when you were 8. I'm sure you remember the finger pricks all the time.
Yep.
Multiple times a day. I do not miss those. And the fact that my fingers are no longer sore and I can just flash my phone onto my arm is so, I never thought that would be the case when I was younger. And now it's just, it's everybody gets
and
it.
having that data at your fingertips.
At your fingertips. You get to understand your body more and understand the condition a bit more as well. And you can see the graphs and you can see, if I wait this long, I don't spike as much. Or if I do this, then this happens. It's really helps with everyone's understanding, which is just a huge positive as well.
That's a big change I found from getting a continuous glucose monitor, was how long I actually need to wait before I eat a meal was way longer than I thought for my body. Because I was before with finger pricks, probably waiting, as you said, like 10, 15 minutes.
It's what other doctors say,
And I find that I need to wait ideally closer to an hour before I eat. Or I'm going way, way high.
It's really interesting because at certain times of the day, I find I'm more insulin resistant or I need to wait for longer than others. So I think a lot of people struggle with this in the morning. Mine's lunchtime. When it's lunchtime, I've been working all day and I'm absolutely starving and I have to wait an extra. I think normally I wait about half an hour, 40 minutes at lunchtime with an increased kind of ratio of carbs to insulin. Because if I inject like bolused the way I would for my breakfast or my dinner, it shoots right up. And I look at my pump device, my PDM, and I go, again. And learning through that is great, because normally I test my bloods, before you eat and then 2 hours after. In that 2 hour period, you haven't seen just how high it can go before it starts to come down. So it really gives you that, like you said, extra understanding, which is really great.
Yeah. It's being able to like fine tune based on
Yeah.
your own body and your own routine is that alone is incredible. And I'm really excited specifically for the better insulin that you were talking about, because having to wait 45 minutes, an hour to eat because you know of how it interacts with your own body, like being able to cut that down, because in a realistic world, we're not waiting that long to eat always. Don't plan when you're going to eat always that far in advance. And I try my best, like with my own daily routine, as I'm sure you do, to adhere to that. But that's just not how the real world works. That's not life.
Exactly. Like if you go for a meal in a restaurant, you can't sit for an hour and wait until the insulin but then you can't not go out to restaurants and spend time with loved ones, and it's a real balancing act. Especially I always find when I go out to eat, it can be a real struggle sometimes.
I agree.
That's why this research into the faster acting novel insulins and the insulin fusion proteins is so important, because people without type 1 might think, oh well, you have insulin, it's just all you got to do is do the injection and then you're good to go. There's a lot more to that and think about, and the insulin that we have is great, but it can be better, and that's obviously a big part of the research that we're funding at the moment.
That is really, really exciting, because as you said, there's I'm so getting much. All like hype here with all that. A question in chat: hybrid closed loop means you still have to enter the carb data for meals. Closed loop will mean no data entry required by the user, right?
Yes, that's what it means. Yeah, so hybrid closed loop, I guess, means that it's not fully closed. So when it's a fully closed loop, that means that, the dream is that you don't have to do any carb counting anymore. There's been one paper that I can remember off the top of my head that's seen success with this, but I think that they saw success, but it wasn't hitting the time and range that we all strive for. So the time and range that we are told to kind of aim for is around 70% with your CGM data. It didn't quite hit that, but it was a great improvement on the hybrid closed loop function that this trial has observed fully closed loop. So hybrid closed loop and then fully closed loop. So there's work to be done on it, but there is research being done on it. And I think that until a full cure is found, with all the cellular cures and all that research going on at the moment, this is would be a really fantastic kind of middle ground to kind of hold people off before the cellular research kind of comes to light. Because
I couldn't imagine even because that's, with a cure, you're like, I'm not thinking about diabetes.
That's it,
at all. But even with something like a fully closed loop like that, I think that would take away a lot of, there's still pieces you'll have to think about, and, taking care of your devices, I think would be the biggest one. But being able to go around a day-to-day life without having to think about making sure I'm getting bolused so much time before a meal, and am I taking the right amount of insulin for this meal, and all of those aspects would be incredible. And it just would improve our lives and our health and our longevity in general. We're not having to face all those consequences. So that's so much cool things coming out. I love hearing about all of this. What a great job that you have getting to dive into all this research all the time.
I feel so lucky. I feel like I'm right on the edge of everything as well, because Breakthrough T1D fund so much research. So like I said earlier, when I attended the EASD conference, a lot of the presentations that I watched, there was acknowledgements to Breakthrough T1D at the end, whether it's funding or support, and we're so heavily involved in the research. And the research is such an important part of, ensuring that the care for people with type 1 is continuously improving rather than just, oh, you have insulin, that's it, you're done. It's always evolving and always improving. And yeah, it's great to be part of a company and a team that's right on the edge of the research, and the nerd in me loves it.
I love it too. It's how could the public get more involved in making breakthrough research like this happen?
So I guess the main thing would be, I'm sure that so we have a page on the UK site, which I'm sure you have on the US site too, which lists out the current actively recruiting trials in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different trials for different things. There's trials to do with heart failure, there's trials to do with technology, there's trials to do with loads of different things. And for the general public, if you're comfortable in getting involved in the research, that is a huge part of making the research happen, is having the people that have the condition really, it helps to accelerate it if there's lots of people that want to get involved. Aside from that, I guess, just kind of talk to people and tell people about type 1 and about any exciting things, and about, TZIELD, because it's a huge thing within the type 1 community. I'm sure a lot of people not in the type 1 community aren't 100% sure what it is or haven't heard that much about it. So I think spreading the word on how exciting the current research is a huge part of it, and just trying to just get everyone behind pushing things forward, because it can be a tricky conversation, clinical trials, with some people. But my belief is, once it reaches a stage where it's being kind of trialed on humans, most of the time it's past a lot of the safety kind of queries, and there's a lot of anxiety people have around clinical trials.
Yeah.
And I think within the type 1 space, I just hope that it doesn't kind of deter people. But yeah, I think just get involved, spread the word, lots of talking about exciting things. And we're constantly posting about, all of the Breakthrough affiliates are constantly talking about all the new exciting publications. So I think, just keep your eye on all of the socials, and you'll learn new things all the time.
I think an important aspect of clinical trials to remember too, for anyone who might be hesitant, is not every clinical trial is trying a new medication or anything.
No.
Sometimes
No,
it's just
exactly
recording your own daily routine and how that affects your, giving them the data for how things affect you personally. So there's lots of different types, lots of different ways to get involved. I know for the
absolutely.
US, we have like an email list that you can put in your information for where you're located, what type of trials you'd be interested in participating with. And it's a really, really great way to, as Mollie said, get involved and help us progress the amazing research we've been talking about today. Have you personally done any clinical trials yourself, or have you had that opportunity?
No.
Yeah.
I would love to have gotten involved with one at some point. But unfortunately, no. I think until I kind of got to university and then did as I was saying earlier, by studying within diabetes, I didn't really know how to apply for any of them, and I didn't really understand kind of how important they were.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, based on where I'm located and my age and certain aspects to do with my personal diabetes, there's not been any that I've been kind of eligible for.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of people within Breakthrough who have done clinical trials, and like you said, they've participated in ones where you just kind of go for 2 or 3 interviews with the study lead, and it's more kind of learning about, and you give them your CGM data, and they analyze the data based on the conversations, and it's not always trialing a new drug. It can be so much more, and just all the information that you can get from people with type 1, the better. But yeah, I'd love to have gotten involved with one, but unfortunately it's never quite worked out. But working here, I am right on the edge of finding out if they are recruiting, so I'll be right in there.
Yes. And I'm actually, no shame, because I'm the same. I signed up for the email list about a year ago at this point, and I just have not had one that has clicked for all of my credentials. So but that's why I think that's why it's so important, though, that we spread the word that as you said, what are clinical trials, why it is important to get involved, because some of them are looking for very specific credentials. And if someone listening here today decides to sign up and they fall under that umbrella, that's huge in us being able to progress with this research. So
yeah, absolutely.
highly encourage, as Mollie said,
Yes.
you all to go and check out how you can get involved with clinical trials, because it really is such a key part for us to be able to progress this research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get more involved. So with both your job in research and you living with type 1 diabetes, we've talked about how there is so many misunderstandings for what T1D is. What would you say is the biggest T1D myth that you wished you could bust?
Oh, how long is a piece of string? This is a big one, because there are so many. I actually asked the involvement group in work this a couple of weeks ago, just because I think as part of our education campaign, we're running a few posts that'll be myth busting. So common things that people with type 1 are asked a lot, and kind of the reality based on the question. So I think a big one for me is, I love to bake. It's one of my favorite hobbies. And people always say, is it not really hard baking when you're diabetic? Like, are you allowed to eat the things that you make? And I think that there's a big stigma around people with diabetes can't eat things that they want. It's like, I just have to calculate how many carbs are in it and I can eat whatever my heart desires. I think that's a big one that I get quite a lot. I think also a lot of people, if I mention I'm having low blood sugar, they'll be like, oh, do you need some insulin? And there's the difference between people thinking that insulin is appropriate if my blood sugars are low, and obviously that's the complete opposite. I think they're probably the two that I get quite a lot. And I mentioned to you earlier, if somebody sees my CGM or my pump on my arm and they go, oh, what's that? And I say, oh, I've got type 1 diabetes. They go, oh, is that the bad kind? So that's a fun one. Because no diabetes is the worst one. They're just different.
They're different.
I think is a big thing to kind of say. They're very different. We get them for different reasons and they affect people in different ways. But yeah, I think the food one grinds my gears the most, just because food's such a huge part of my life personally. And it's a big passion of mine. And yeah, I think sometimes I get a bit of a, oh, are you sure? You sure you can have that? Yes. Give me the chocolate.
I mean, all of those resonate with me.
I
still, and this is something that we're coming up here around the holidays, I still have family members be like, oh, I got a sugar-free version for you. And I don't really want that. That doesn't matter to me. I just have to make sure that I take the required insulin.
Exactly. It's just another thing that I love about my job is I get to educate people on things that are so obvious to you and I are so not obvious to people who don't live with type 1 or aren't part of, or don't have friends or family, or even do have family, like you said. People ask you if you need sugar-free things, or I think a big part of why I love my job is education and teaching people the difference between how to treat a hypo, or how to treat a hypo, or what the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes is, or what is an autoimmune condition. I get to teach people these things, and it's a great part of the work that I do. I love it.
Yeah, I can't agree more, because as I was telling you earlier, that's the whole reason I got involved with Breakthrough T1D. And what I do in my own personal content creation is education is so important. Advocacy is so important, because it's just very misunderstood in general. And being able to spread that knowledge, I think, is one of the easiest things all of us can do here for free. You don't have to necessarily be donating large amounts of money to Breakthrough T1D to be making a difference in our lives.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. If you could say something to your younger self, having just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, what would you say?
It's one of those things where I think I just say to myself, your life's going to change and things are going to be different. And it's going to be really difficult at times. And there's going to be times where you will just feel like throwing in the towel. You'll think, I don't want to manage this anymore. You'll ignore it. You'll really butt heads and hate being diabetic. But at the end of that road, you'll come to a place where you understand diabetes and you realize that it's not something to hate, because if I was to hate it for my whole life, I wouldn't have made the progress that I have. I think I've kind of learned to love it in a really kind of weird sense. And it's one of those things where it has gotten so much easier. And with the advances in tech, especially, it's made my life a lot simpler. And yeah, just, there's light at the end of the tunnel, I think would be a big thing I'd say to myself.
I love that. Yeah, it is. And I think you are very unique in that your whole life is revolved around T1D, and but I love how you've really embraced it. And I think that's super, super admirable and inspiring, because it is something that I do talk to people who are there are a lot of people who are very secretive about, not secretive, but private about their diabetes, and which is totally valid. But it's so refreshing to see people like yourself who embrace it and make it a huge, it's a huge part of your life, but not in a negative way.
Oh no, absolutely not. I say to my boyfriend, it's my whole personality at this point, because it's my work, and then I'm so interested in it outside of work as well. But yeah, I think it's been a long journey for me, kind of getting to this place and the relationship I have with my own type 1. And I completely understand when people are more private, don't want to talk about it, don't want to share, because at one point that was me as well.
Yes. Yeah.
I would be really secretive. I'd be really self-conscious of testing my blood sugars in public or doing any kind of injections in public. I was quite ashamed of it in a sense, and I wanted to keep it a secret. But the older I get and the wiser I get, I kind of, I just learned that I think, it's just something that I'd rather people knew and understood more than me kind of hide it, and then it affects me in like a mental health kind of sense. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
That totally resonates with me too, because I used to be that way, where
yeah,
I would even say, like, within like the last couple years, I finally have felt more comfortable and more outspoken about it, where before it was a really hidden part of my life, or now I meet people and I'm like, oh, by the way, I have type 1 diabetes, and I'll flash them my CGM.
Do this all the time. All the time.
I'm type 1 diabetic.
I love spotting people with T1D out in the wild.
Yes.
I went to see Oasis in the summer, and where I was stood in the crowd, I saw somebody with a sensor, and I ran through and I tapped him and I did this, and we like bumped sensors, and then I just went back to my friends, and I was like, I love it. It's great.
I love that so much. We talk about too, like, I think up until recently, it's such a invisible disease is type 1 diabetes. And now we have one identifying factor, which is devices now. So it is so exciting to see when you see someone else out in the wild with a sensor. Because I'll do the same, where I'm like, oh, hey, like,
look, me too, twins.
Me too. But it makes you feel not so alone at the same time.
Absolutely.
I think that's
absolutely.
I don't know what your experience was early on in your diagnosis, but I definitely felt very lonely in the beginning.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah.
I always share that Rufus for me was such a big thing, getting Rufus, because I had my own little like type 1 diabetic buddy. But that's all I really had. And then all these friends around me who didn't understand what T1D is, and it made me like kind of a weirdo in school for a little bit. But now I feel like there's a lot more representation out there.
Absolutely.
And being able to visually see other people with CGMs or pumps, and knowing like, okay, hey, I'm not alone out there.
Literally. Yeah, I think, like we were saying earlier, the advancements in tech are amazing, and this is the one identifying factor. there was one other girl who went to my high school who had type 1, and we weren't in any of the same classes. We didn't really get to spend much time together. But apart from her, I didn't know anybody until I joined Breakthrough T1D that had type 1 diabetes. And like you said, if you would just look at me before I had my CGM and my pump, nobody would have any idea. And it can be quite isolating when you feel like it's kind of you against the world in a sense. But yeah, it is. It's kind of, I think, as you're the same as me, as somebody with type 1, when I see someone with it, I'm like,
Yeah.
I got you. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I love that so much because yeah, I think that's it can be so lonely, and
Yeah. Really
having
can,
these communities. That's why I talk about our community here with Breakthrough T1D Play all the time, where we have a Discord and we have just like a hub where all these people can exchange their stories and exchange their troubles and help support each other. It's just that makes it that much easier and bearable to get through dealing with a condition like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We kind of touched on this a little bit, but more in a wider sense instead of just clinical trials and research. How can people help and support those in the T1D community in the UK?
So I guess, of course, like you said, clinical trials is a big thing. I think there are a good number of events that we run as a charity in the UK. So we do discovery days, which are open for people to attend, free to attend. And we have, experts by experience who speak about living with type 1, and we have doctors who present about their research, and we have scientists, and, there's sometimes people in the public eye who have type 1 or have relatives with type 1 who want to also get involved. And they can be really great from an educational point of view for people, especially if, say you have a friend or a family member who's recently been diagnosed and you don't really know where to start. It gets so many people in a room who are so experienced and have probably been through a very similar story as you and your friend or your family. And it's a really collaborative and supportive kind of environment. And we do quite a lot of them. So try and do them across the country. I live in Manchester, and I'm trying to get one in Manchester because I'd love to be at one where I live. But yeah, we do them in London, Cardiff. We're doing one in Scotland next year as well. So
I'm surprised there's
really
not
good.
one already in Manchester.
So I think that, so there used to be a Breakthrough T1D office in Manchester, but after COVID, they just have one in London now. So a lot of the discovery days are in London for that reason. But we used to have a lot of them in Manchester, and I think over the last few years, they've not been as much because they haven't had anyone living here who works for the charity anymore. I think that everyone who was based in the Manchester office has kind of either moved to London or, are doing other things or whatever. So I think I spoke with Karen, who's our CEO, and she was really keen on the idea of getting things up and running in Manchester again. So hopefully we can do a Northern Discovery Day, which will be really fun. So yeah, they're great. I think, the Discovery Days are fab. We do lots, we're always represented at, sporting events, so marathons and the Great North Run, all that kind of thing. We're always there and very much present. And yeah, I think if anybody does want to kind of get involved with support as well, we have a supporter care email address where you can have kind of assets sent to you, educational bits if you want to learn more about what type 1 is, how it affects people. There's loads and loads of things on our website which can help people kind of understand it a little bit more.
Mollie, we're at the end of our hour here. I
can't believe it.
Wish there's so much more I wish I could talk to you about, but
I know
this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we head out, I just want to ask you if there's anything that you want to plug or talk about before we end T1D Tuesday today.
Like I mentioned earlier, at the moment in Diabetes Awareness Month, we are really trying to spread the message of education for understanding of what type 1 diabetes is. So if you do see any of our posts on social media, we're on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, just share it wide, spread the word, get people understanding, get people talking. And yeah, I think, more conversations happen, the more progress can be made.